Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life podcast. This is Laura Dinan-Haber and I am joined by co-hosts Joseph and Mary today. And we're so excited because we have the opportunity to meet a lot of very interesting people who are doing great things, not only locally in their own communities, but work that spans quite larger and longer than that. So we had the opportunity as we kicked off today to find some commonalities between placemaking. Joseph, how are you doing?
I am doing great. And I'm excited for today because I did a little prep, and anyone who sits in the wrong classroom for half a year I'm a fan of them. So we're gonna have a fun conversation today.
I'm excited to see where that goes. Mary, how are you doing?
I'm doing great because I'm here with all of you today.
And could you kindly introduce not only our guest, but also a close friend of yours?
Absolutely, yes. So without further ado, Julie DeLucca-Collins. But I've known Julie over time. And as I said before we hit the record button, I've been following Julie's career and watching her blossom in an amazing way, ways that I never knew possible. So let's get started here. She is a TEDx speaker, business coach, best-selling author of the award-winning book, Confident You: Simple Habits to Live the Life You Have Imagined. How powerful is that? She empowers women entrepreneurs and leaders to grow thriving businesses with confidence and clarity. And she's the host of Casa de Confidence podcast and a Tiny Habits certified coach. Julie shares practical strategies for achieving goals and living a fulfilled life. Julie, welcome to the Prime Life podcast. That's quite a bit that you have created for yourself and for others. So take it away. We'd love to hear more about you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor to be here. And again, podcasting is one of my favorite things. So anytime I get invited, I'm honored, but excited because this is a great way to be able to meet other people and learn about them and also share a little bit about my journey. And Mary, like you said, have known you. And again, I'm incredibly grateful for the support that people like you have given me. I certainly hear everything that you said and think, who is she talking about? Because even the person that has a podcast and a book and a business about confidence tends to kind of wonder, is that me or is it somebody else?
Well, I just want to say one more thing, too. I actually have seen photos of you when you were building your brand, and there were some great photos of you. And I took a step back and look at Julie go.
Yeah. The past a few years, and again, I knew that eventually I was going to go out on my own. I had a career in corporate America. I worked for an educational company out of New York. And when I moved to Connecticut, it's been 12, almost 13 years, I really was excited to continue to be able to go into New York. But somewhere along the line, I knew that I wanted to do more. I wanted to be local here to Connecticut. This is my home and community. And I've been able to kind of take a step in a new direction. I think that especially when I was turning 50 or right before that, I started to wonder, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Is this it? Should I be doing something different? And I knew that I wanted to use my gifts in a different way. And when I was offered a separation package because of the pandemic, the company that I worked for was hit very hard. I went ahead and I jumped because I thought this is my opportunity to take this new path. I certainly had been thinking of doing it, but as many, right, we second guessed and we think, oh, people are going to think I'm crazy, leaving a successful job, a consistent paycheck, and then doing this thing that you really doesn't have a name or doesn't have a clear picture, but I'm so glad that I was able to do that and that I took the leap, because every time I've been able to move forward, every time I've been able to really be able to create the impact on the lives of others who may be maybe 10 steps behind me, 5 steps behind me, it really reiterates to me that this is the right direction. And again, we all need each other. And for that reason, I'm always looking also for the people that are gone before me so that I can continue to learn and grow and become that better version of myself.
So something you just said sparked a memory for me. I have an individual in my life who is going through a little bit of a career change, and they were notified that their position was eliminated. But don't worry, you have until February when you're going to remain in your role to find something new. And the opportunity that they're looking at is outside of what everyone else in their circle would consider the next best step. And so when you said you took the opportunity to make that leap, you knew that was something that you were going to do. You just didn't know when. And the universe said, well, how about now?
How about now?
Yeah, how about now? What would you say, right? Because when I speak with this person in my life, they're interested in something that people say, I just don't see that for you. And I think it comes down to confidence, right? Confidence in knowing oneself, confidence in knowing one's experience, where one wants to learn and where they want to go next in their journey. So, talk to us a little bit about that. It had to be a big decision, and I'm sure people didn't feel the same way you did. But at the end of the day, this is something for you, by you. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, this is an excellent question. I know that for me, right, there has always been that what is next and kind of trying to get to the next level. You accomplish something and you're like, okay, what's the next challenge? I certainly, when I was laid off, it would have been very easy. And I actually did. I did have a couple offers of people that wanted me to do some consulting for them. And I very good at what I did. I certainly was happy to be able to have that opportunity, but I knew that I needed to kind of shift. And what I needed to do is really be able to do it imperfectly, do it afraid, and know that I wasn't going to get it right away. And it wasn't going to make sense to anybody else, but that I needed to really tap into that desire. And I couldn't really, if you said, hey, Julie, make a picture of what you're going to do, I couldn't have made that picture, right? But I needed to just really be able to pursue, okay, I want to help other women. Okay, what does that look like? I've been speaking before. When for my company, I represented us in several national companies or conferences. So that wasn't exactly new to me, but it certainly was new representing myself. And when it comes to confidence, the reality is that we don't always have it. And like, for instance, your friend, he's moving to a different place where he's feeling that pull. And yes, it has to make sense for him. And he may not necessarily be able to explain it. But what he's going to be able to do is by every small step forward, he will be able to find the evidence that he's doing it, doing the thing, whatever the thing may be. And that's really what happened to me as I started to, everybody has big dreams. But as I started to take the step forward, you get into motion, you build momentum, and then you're always finding that evidence that you're becoming better. You're doing the thing that you didn't know or didn't see yourself doing before. And it becomes to fit, and it becomes to kind of be that thing that you grow into the role. But again, and if you think about it, also in our corporate jobs, we receive promotions or we're hired for a role, but we don't know how to do everything that role requires. We really learn on the job. And I think that the same thing when we're pivoting to a new career, to a new adventure, we have to know that we're going to grow into that new person, into that new role as we go along. And again, it has to only make sense to you, even if you can't explain it and it seems scary.
So let's continue on the note of confidence. Nature, nurture, it sounds like it's a little bit of both there, probably. As you get older, you get stuck in your ways sometimes. You gave some examples of people who had been doing jobs for a while and may not feel confident doing something new. So how do you help people take that next step? Like what suggestions do you have?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Well, amazing. And again, thank you for sharing a question that's very well thought out. Helping individuals, and my first career ever was a teacher. So I think that I'm always going to be a teacher at heart. And for me, there's no one size fits all solution in working with individuals. So it's a very targeted approach that's tailored to the individuals. Everybody comes with their own backgrounds. Now, one of the things that I really made sure that not only did I work on for myself, but that I really was a tool that I was able to help others with is learning behavior design. And like you said, many of us are set in our ways. The reality is that our brain likes to automate everything that we do. Think about the times that you drive home and you're just not sure how you got there. That's your brain automating the process. In the same way with everything that we do from the morning that we get up from till the time that we go to sleep and everything in between, there's a lot of automations. So creating a new reality, a new way of doing things is going to require one, intentionality, also a vision, and creating some tangible things that support bringing that vision to light. So that's a little bit of what I do with individuals is number one, really identify what is it that they want to do. Maybe they don't have a clear picture. They want to build a business or they want to write a book, but they don't know what is it about, or they want to launch a podcast, whatever it might be, right? These are the things that we first identify. What is the clearer vision, the big picture? Then we talk about a little bit, okay, if that's the big picture, what is the first goal to get you there? And then from that goal, we start to analyze what are the simple steps that you have to do daily, weekly, monthly to move forward to that goal. And again, behavior design and understanding how your brain works is very important. This is one of the reasons that I became a Tiny Habits coach. And by the way, I have other certifications and they're great. They're phenomenal. But the Tiny Habits coaching is the one that helps me create the larger impact for the individuals who don't know Tiny Habits. There is a book called Tiny Habits by Dr. BJ Fogg. He is the founder of the Behavior Lab at Stanford University. He has been studying habits for many, many years, over 20 years. And most of the books that talk about habits are based on his research. And the one thing that he really stresses is that habits are created not because of the motivation we have to do something, and not because we did the behavior 21 times, 66 times. Habits are done because our brain feels good. So I teach my clients how to create tiny, simple habits that then create maximum impact. And it allows them to create the new behaviors that are needed, right? To start a business or to do whatever new thing that they want to do. So that's a little bit of how I set myself apart from other business coaches, because the reality, anybody can teach you some of the basics in business, how to run a P&L, how to create a marketing or a sales strategy. But the reality is that even if you have those tools, if you're not doing the thing day in and day out consistently, and that may require habits, you're not going to be able to get much traction.
No, I think that's well said. But I'm very curious about the self-doubt piece because confidence is your cornerstone. How do you help individuals move away from self-doubt while you're also embarking on tiny habits with them?
Mary, I would like to say that I am never going to be able to help people move away from self doubt. Our brain is wired to be negative. Our brain is wired to always focus on the bad. And in some cases, focusing on the comparison. We live in a society in which we're always comparing to other people. We're always seeing the Instagrammable things and the feeds that always celebrate perfection and the good things. And then we are always going to compare and despair. But the reality is, what I help my clients do is become aware. Hey, I'm thinking I don't measure up. Oh, there goes my brain again telling me I'm not good enough. Or here is that thought that I am never going to get it. And once we begin to be more aware of, hey, this is how my brain works, this is what is happening, then we can start to then find stories or ways in which we can rewrite or remind ourselves, hey, I'm a beginner at this. In my 20s, I think I was so intent on being perfect, doing the right thing, showing, that there were no cracks in my armor. I remember when I was a first time manager and I had a few people reporting to me, I never wanted to let my bosses know that I struggled, that I didn't know how to do that I was about to fail at something. And boy, did I work really hard at keeping it together. The reality is that those instances of failures, those instances of not being perfect, are the ones that created the larger lessons for myself, both personally and professionally. So again, we're always going to look at going and trying to become better, right? Leveling up, becoming 1% better. But it's important to know that we're never going to leave those doubts behind. We're never going to leave those comments that are, I call them the judge and the saboteurs, right? From positive intelligence. Those things never leave us, they stay with us, but we can learn how to manage and lessen their impact and the sound of their voices more so in our lives.
I want to talk more about tiny habits because I think about tiny habits in two ways, right? The way in which you've learned, you've become certified, and then my initial reaction was tiny habits. Well, I do things tiny sometimes because I know they're difficult and I don't want to do them in a big way. Tell us what the appropriate definition of tiny habits are. Can you give us some examples of how one can integrate a tiny habit into their day, maybe to increase productivity?
That's my favorite thing to talk about. So thank you so much, Laura. So tiny habits. First, I want to tell you a little bit of what Dr. Fogg talks about is a habit. So the anatomy of a habit is an ABC, and that is the ability, the behavior that you're going to do, and then celebrating that you did the behavior. Now, most of us think that we have to go big or go home. So, for instance, think about the people who want to go ahead and get in shape, run a marathon, and they think January 1st, I'm going to start running. The reality is January 1st, January 2nd, January 15th, you're really relying on motivation to be able to do that. But when life starts to happen, when things start to shift, then the difficult behavior that you haven't been doing is going to then not be as consistent. Why? Because you've been relying on motivation all along. And when motivation goes out the window, you're going to focus on, oh my gosh, this is really hard. I cannot imagine running this much. So the tiny habits, what it does is your motivation equals your behavior and equals your behavior equals your motivation, your ability, and a prompt. So the way in which we do a tiny habit is first we identify the behaviors that are already existing for us, that are already there. So perhaps if you want to start running, one of the things that you do every morning is maybe you stretch every morning, right? And at the beginning, you're not going to go out the block and run a mile, 2 miles if you've been sitting on the couch all along in December, right? So you're going to think about, well, what is the one thing that I can do, right? Maybe you can stretch a little further. Maybe you can decide, I'm going to walk around the block. Those are tiny habits. And really, the reality is that tiny habits are tiny little minuscule steps that your brain is going to say, that's not enough. How will I be a runner? How will I get to if I'm only doing this? But the only doing this, what it's doing is creating that evidence that you can do it, is building the momentum for you. When it comes to productivity, a lot of individuals think that they need to get that new calendar or that new app and that thing, right? But you're trying to implement something and use something that you're not used to. one big thing that I do, and this is the biggest thing that I teach my clients, is in the morning, in order to be a little more productive during the day, is we're going to start with a very tiny behavior, and you're going to think like, oh no, that's never going to work, but it does. The first thing that I ask clients to do is that when they come in, they sit at their desk, right? That's the behavior that's already existing. When they sit at their desk, right? Then they open their calendar, right? That's the behavior, the new behavior. And then they celebrate that they open their calendar. What is that going to do to make you more productive? Number one is not making you jump right into email. Email is the biggest time suck that everybody has, is the thing that ends up kind of sidetracking. How many times have we been checking email, then we're responding, and then we're like, oh no, I need to go look for that, and we get distracted. Every time we distract ourselves with the dings, right? Or the email or the this, we have to have at least 17 minutes to be able to get to the same level of attention that we had prior to the distraction. So it's important, number one, to start your day with something as simple as looking at your calendar and then maybe writing the top thing that you need to accomplish that day, or looking at what is that appointment that you have today, right? When I looked in my calendar this morning, I looked that I had this recording. I'm like, okay, I have this recording. So then that started to kind of frame my brain to that. But it also helped me to decide, right? Not only do I have that recording, but I have a deadline. Where in my day does that fall? And where do I create the space and not allow the distractions to really pop up? When we don't know what our priorities are, when we don't know what our plan is, then that's one thing that really is detrimental to our productivity. The other piece in this, whether you're in corporate America, whether you're at home, or whether you're an entrepreneur, a lot of times we also want to do it all. And that's not going to be a way that you can be successful. I love to teach the Eisenhower matrix for individuals. And, what is important that you must do? What is important or urgent that you must do? What are the things that you shouldn't be doing, that are not important and, are not really for you? Really analyzing, and that's maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute before you start your day, trying to analyze that will set you up for success. And again, I want to stress celebrating that you did that. Ooh, I went ahead and I did that, right? And then you can start to move on, because what happens is one habit creates another one. Tiny habits are like plants. They begin to expand and grow. And the more that you find success doing the one thing, then you can say, well, what can I do better tomorrow? And you can start to see what are the behaviors you can add to that existing behavior.
So I was going to talk about the celebration because I'm celebrating that we're here today. I'm just enjoying the whole ride. Let's talk about celebrating. You actually launched a podcast of your own, and what led you to do that? You did one episode recently on female entrepreneurs starting business later in life, so that caught my attention. I haven't actually finished it yet. But what led you down that path, and how are you celebrating that achievement?
Well, I will tell you, the podcast is my husband's and I baby for sure. We don't have real children, but we have the podcast and we love it. I always talked about doing a podcast. And for many years, when I was in my corporate role, I wanted to have my company start a podcast, and I was advocating for this and researching and doing a lot of that, but I'd never brought it to fruition. Nobody was really excited or as on board as I would have liked, right, for the podcast. When I was laid off at the beginning of the pandemic, I went all in building my business. And of course, I had some great, and I still do have some great mentors that have been in the online space for a long time. And I've been incredibly lucky to work with them. Now, at the same time that I was starting my business, and this is again a month into the pandemic, I was still planning a big celebration for my birthday. I was turning 50. I'd been planning a birthday party. It was going to be a big bash. And I did not think we were not going to have this big party. I thought this lockdown is just a blip. We're going to get back to every day. But my husband saw the real truth. So he ordered the podcasting equipment. And then when it arrived, he said, hey, your party is not going to happen. But I ordered you podcasting equipment because you've always talked about having a podcast. And don't worry about the tech. You do the talking and I will do the editing. My husband did sound engineering in college. He is a tech person. He works in tech now. So again, it was easy for him to do that part. And at first I thought, I don't know what I would talk about. I don't know. And it was just kind of this thing like, here it is, but how does this work? So I decided, you know what? I'm just going to launch into it because I had seen, right, with my past experience in trying to get a podcast going for my corporate job, that there's a lot of times that we just think and think and think and don't take action. And I'm more of an action taker. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to launch. And I decided that the launch date was going to be on my birthday instead of my party. And I told everybody, come to my podcast launch party that I'm having and I'm launching it. And once I put it out there that I was having this podcast launch, then I needed to have a podcast launch. So I got busy into calling people. And I, again, was not sure what it would look like, right? And now as I help individuals, because my husband and I now do that, we help individuals with building and launching and growing podcasts. Now I would do it a little differently, but I just, kept going. And the first thing that I did is come up with a name. And I was not necessarily tying the name into the business, which the business name is Go Confidently Services. But I wanted to have a name that sort of signified a little bit of what my husband and I are, who we are. In our home, I'm DeLuca, he's Collins. In our home, we've always referred to it as DeLucca-Collins. So Casa de Collins. So now when we launched the podcast, because he was going to be my partner in crime here, we decided to call it Casa de Confidence. And it was just kind of a happy accident that was sort of close to what the business name was. And again, the podcast was always something that it was an opportunity for me to share the stories of individuals who have gone confidently in the direction of their dreams. Because most of us see what we are accomplishing from the outside, but we don't know what is going on underneath the surface. We don't know the struggles. We don't know the failures. And we need to normalize that that's part of the journey to confidence. So that's how the podcast came about. I was incredibly lucky that I had a great source of support from friends and individuals that we debuted at the top 10%. And that has been something that we continue to grow the podcast. And I'm happy and just honored that I've had some great individuals come and share their story. And we're continue to grow. Now we're at the top 2% of podcast. And it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about because everybody right now, the majority of people are consuming their content through podcasting, whether it be video, audio, or a combination of both. So we have to have the type of content that resonates with other people. So that's the story of the podcast. And again, it's something that it's been an exciting ride. It's been a fun ride. I have learned so much. And, I encourage you to go back and listen to that episode with Andy Lyons. She is phenomenal. And yes, she is someone who Don't Be Caged by Your Age is her podcast. And she's really an advocate for women much older than I am right now. And she's bringing these stories of individuals who at 50, 60, 70, 80 are building something fun and exciting, and they're not letting their age define them.
I think that's great. And we certainly have many guests on that say exactly what you did, Julie. So I appreciate that comment. So what's really cool is you talked about your husband. Again, I did follow that. I really saw that on Facebook, how your husband came into play, how you created the podcast with his help. And I love that story. How do you, what advice would you give to our listeners regarding, balancing professional, personal lives as it relates to confidence and tiny habits?
This is a very good question. And I think that this is something that a lot of people have been sort of marinating on lately, right? If you think about when social media first came about, I remember I had a Facebook profile 2008 and 9, and it was a very hush hush thing, right? Because it was not professional. We didn't want those things to meld. And if we wanted to be on social, we needed to go on LinkedIn, right? And things have really evolved. Things have really changed. The reality is that all of us have the ability to really be able to, we're not going to scrub our presence from the internet. If it's not in our profile, it's going to be on somebody else's. So you control the narrative, who you are. For me, I have always been very clear that if you're hiring me for a position, I want you to know who I am. I want you to know who what my values are, what's important to me, what I stand for. So I don't separate necessarily the person from the brand. I am the brand. I am the brand. My business may be this, my podcast may be that, but you're going to see me show up in both of them. So it's very important that we really analyze, right? And it may be uncomfortable for people who are private or people who are not necessarily excited about having a podcast or putting a video out there, but it's important for you to know that you can control what people know. You can control how you show up. And ultimately, if you want to be known, you can share the things that indicates to others what you think, what you believe, what you stand for, and how you can bring value to somebody else. And for me, I teach my clients as well to be able to show up in an authentic way. I think that a lot of people become very distrustful this day and age. So when we create a relationship with someone, especially in a business world, if they know who you are and what you stand for and what you believe in, it's going to be better that you find the right fit of people you are going to be the person for them to work with or to collaborate with. So that's very important. I don't know if that made sense.
It made sense. I love what you said because I'd like to think that I do that. Like you could see me, I always use this example. You could see me at Whole Foods, for example, or you could see me here where I am at Nassau or wherever, but I'm always the same person. I know that sounds a little strange, but I am who I am, and you'll see me no matter where, or if I'm at a fundraising event, I'm the same person. And it's taken me a little bit because I understand what you're saying, because some people like to keep some things private about themselves. But then you don't have to think. You can just always be who you are, show up as you are. And it's a lot less complicated and it's easier, and life's too short. Like, why
Yeah.
be someone you're not or try to be someone you're not? It usually doesn't end well or doesn't work. I don't think anyway.
No, and to add to that, Mary, I think that again, I don't share everything about my life with the world. But if you look at my, people tend to say, "Oh my God, you're everywhere in social media." Sure, but am I really? I am sharing with you what I believe is important for you to know about me. What you see is what you get. And the reality is that a lot of people think that they need to have this persona. And then when we enter a relationship with them, then we feel a little let down. And here's the thing. If we can normalize for others that maybe we went through this struggle, or this is a difficulty, or this is a challenge, then they themselves will feel more connected to you and will cheer for you in the process. But also, you don't, like you said, you don't have to worry about who am I? Am I showing up in this way and that way there? No, it becomes part of who you are to be present to other people in the manner that they see you somewhere else.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about a lot, and I think it's interesting, right? Because one of the common threads is goals, and it's talking about actions or steps that people can take to envision what they want for oneself, define it as a goal, and then creating that clear vision to get there. So it sounds really straightforward, but I think we all know it's not. Can you talk to us a little bit about how, whether it's small actions or tiny actions or other things that you coach on, can help people get from, the thought of my goal, right? Using your podcast, for example, I want to start a podcast or whatever that goal is. How do they get there through some actionable steps?
Oh, my favorite question to answer. You guys are good. I have to tell you that for me, again, when I teach individuals, I typically teach things that have worked for me that I've gone through. One of the things that I use in my business is the 12-week year. I don't know if you're familiar with the book. I highly encourage everyone to get it. And not only did I read the book, but I went through the training with the authors of the book, Brian Moran, and what it teaches, right? And most people create a goal. We're getting ready to end the year and beginning in January, everybody's making new goals. Like we talked about with the workout, example, by February, March, you're sort of moved on to the next thing and you forget what the goals were. So, number one, I want to encourage your listeners to actually write down the goal that they have. This is something that a lot of people don't do. They have a goal, but they haven't really written it down. Once you write your goal, it's very important that you come up with all of the different things that you need to do that will get you closer to getting that goal. So, for instance, when I did my TED Talk, I always had that as a goal, and it was something that I knew I wanted to do a TED Talk. And then I started to write it down. I'm going to do a TED Talk. And in 2022, I applied to a TED Talk. And then I got denied. They said, thank you, no thank you. And I was devastated. And I thought, my gosh, they don't want me. Oh no, right? And you go through that whole cycle of I'm not good enough and second guessing yourself. Finally, we ended 2022. And by 2023, I wrote down, I want to do a TED Talk, but I had stopped there. And then I was speaking to my friend and he said, hey, I'm doing a TED Talk. You want to do a TED Talk? How are you coming with that? I said, I got to apply. I got to get going on that. He said, well, what do you need to do a TED Talk? I said, well, I need to apply. And he's like, and how are you going to apply? Well, I need to find who I need to apply to. And then all of a sudden, it reminded me, right? For everything that we want to accomplish, not only do we need to have the goal and SMART goals, right? We've heard it. They need to be specific. They need to be measurable. All of these things that we talk about, SMART goals, fine. But then what is it that you break it down into? If I wanted to do a TED Talk, maybe every Monday I would go to the different websites and look to who had open applications for a TED Talk. If I wanted to do a TED Talk, then I needed to kind of do research on my topic. And these are the things, right, that people don't realize. Now, this is where the 12-week year framework is very important. And it is what I teach my clients. Most people tend to break down their goals into either the year, the half a year, or quarters, right? Into Q1, Q2, fine. Problem with that is that somewhere along the line, you're going to default. You're going to not do it. Life is going to happen. And then you're going to think, oh, I already messed up. I got to wait for Q2 to start again. With the 12-week year, you can start at 12 weeks all over again. And what that allows you to do is to not only keep in mind what your big goal is, but also what are the daily things. So I marry all of the steps that are required to achieve a goal. I marry those into my calendar. What are the things that if I need to, for instance, if I'm building a business and I need to get more clients, well, I need to network. What days do I network? And then measurable, right? How many people do I need to network with, or how many network do I need to go into to maybe create conversations to then actually work with someone? And every Monday, I have what I call my CEO time, in which I don't do anything else except go back and look at my goals, look at the steps, double check that it's on my calendar. Did I do it? Did I not? And give myself kind of a grade. And then that data helps me really course correct if I need to. Many people, they go to the gym and their goal is to get fit. Well, that's not very specific. What does it mean to be fit? Maybe you're going to be able to run a mile. Maybe you're going to be able to lift more weight. So then that means that how much are you going to lift to begin with? And are you tracking your progress? Are you lifting today more than yesterday? Why? Why not? What is it that you need to do? So those are the goals and the steps that we take in order to achieve goals. And again, it helps with your productivity. It helps overall with clarity, because many times, again, we are doing things that we shouldn't be doing, but it's mainly because we don't have the intentionality and the plan that we can go back to.
With a 12-week year, the quarter is up before you even know it.
That's right.
We're getting a little bit short on the time, so I'm going to ask a quick question. But earlier you talked about failure and how that's important in kind of pushing you forward, but it obviously impacts confidence. So how do you help someone who's failed multiple times? Maybe they're feeling less confident and push them forward.
So the biggest thing, and let's say I was that person, multiple failures. When we define failure as a negative, we're always going to not be able to move ahead. The reality is that failure is our biggest teacher. Failure is our biggest course corrector. And if we can just start to view it, right, as something that informs the next step, informs us. And a lot of times I tell my clients, and by the way, I say this to myself as well, oh my God, I figured out a way in which not to do it, right? And I think that if we start to change a little bit of our language, language is incredibly important. Our brain is hearing that. When we say, oh, I didn't do it, then your friend's like, oh, your brain will say, oh, you're right, I didn't do it, I cannot do it. But if you say, wow, I didn't do it, it didn't work out in that manner, let me figure out a new way, or how can I? Then your brain is that computer that will start to figure out different ways of doing it. But it all goes back to us normalizing that I am not better or worse because I failed. I am just a human working at it. All of us start in the same place when it comes to many things. We failed at walking many times. Why do we walk? We probably had adults and parents and friends that were like, oh, yay, you fall, go get up, right? That's what we want to see. And that's what we fail to do as adults many times. We stop celebrating the downfalls. It's just about really normalizing. And that's really, I call it the 4 N's. One, we have to notice, right? I notice I failed. Number 2, you have to normalize. Hey, I'm normal. I'm human. I failed. And then we have to neutralize whatever thoughts are coming in. Oh, my brain is telling me I'll never do this. And then the last N is your next best step. Oh, I failed. What can I do next? How can I get back up? And even if it's a tiny, more improvement, 1%, the reality is that a 1% improvement is the compounding effect. And in the year, you really will be much more successful than you were as opposed to someone not moving forward 1%.
So as we wrap here, we want to thank you for spending your time with us, but want to know more about what is your why? You've got your journey to get here, but why is it that you wake up every day and do the work that you do?
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me and for this question. I think that this is an important question that everybody has to, at one point or another, be able to grapple with. And for me, my why has always been about helping. I was brought up by a very strong, independent woman, and she always talked about how we had a responsibility to use our gifts. And that's part of my why. But the other why that I have is I have nieces. I have young women who are coming after me, and I don't want them to be in a world where, number one, they don't see what is possible for them. Number two, that they go about thinking that they're a failure because they've had failures. You are not the failure. You are the person that had a failed attempt. And I want them to know that. And the more that I can help other women, specifically because that's really who I work with. And I do work with other cool dudes, but I do like helping women. And the reason I like that is because if I can make the difference in the life of the one woman who then has a son who is going to marry a woman, and then that son is going to then teach her children or share with her spouse, right? Is that ripple effect. So for me, it's not just the people that I'm working with and creating the picture that my nieces can then see and think that it's possible, but it's about the fact that that other person who maybe didn't have the same experiences and opportunities than I did will then be able to overcome some of these thoughts that I can't do it into the I will do it, because of the fact that they were able to collaborate with me, have support, or even just listen to the podcast. Maybe they will hear the one thing that can make a difference for them.
That's great. And again, we'll put all of the information on how to contact you in the show notes. But for those listeners who want to know immediately, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, I will tell you, you can email me at julie@goconfidentlycoaching.com. My website is Go Confidently Coaching. But if you put goconfidentlycoaching.com, if you add the /quick links, you will see some of my best resources there. And feel free, to either book an appointment. People can book a coffee chat. I love meeting new people. But yeah, those I'm everywhere online as well.
Perfect. Well, thanks again to our listeners. Thank you again, Julie. And we look forward to next episode of the Prime Life podcast. Thanks so much.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.